This is the biggest garage shakeup we've ever seen. Some amazing cars have sadly left, but some absolute icons have joined. Now on this garage update, we're going to be giving you an insight into all of the details on all of these special cars and the future of what we're going to be doing with all of these amazing icons, including one of the biggest challenges I have ever undertaken with this car right here. And for the very first time, this is going to be a dynamic, moving garage update at Knock Hill Race Circuit.
I have never driven every car back to back all in the same day. So we've come to the stunning circuit of Knock Hill in Scotland to take the garage update to an entirely different level with a lap in every car. Just 30 minutes out of Edinburgh, Knock Hill is Scotland's only FIA-approved race circuit and is one of the few tracks in the world eligible for racing in both clockwise and anti-clockwise directions. At just 1.27 miles, it's short, but it's full of character, perfect to explore the complete garage.
And for the first time, we're going to be answering a few of your questions that you asked me ahead of filming this video over on Instagram.
The latest car to join the garage is the Lamborghini Revuelto. Painted in Ad Personam Oro Alba Chroma Flare paint, the Revuelto runs a 6.5-litre naturally aspirated V12 that revs out to 9,500 RPM. Combined with the 2 electric motors on each front wheel and a 3rd electric motor embedded within the 8-speed twin-clutch gearbox, Revuelto generates over 1,000 brake horsepower, resulting in a 0 to 60 mile/hour time of just 2.2 seconds and topping out at a wild 217 miles per hour.
All right, we're going to start from the very top with the very latest car to join the garage, which is the Lamborghini Revuelto. Now, this has actually been in the garage for a fair few months. It's just the way that the stars aligned, or sadly didn't align, that haven't allowed me to even turn a wheel in this thing until literally the week that we're filming this. So we've just come off the back of the first drive of this car up in the Scottish Highlands. Let me just touch on why this car appealed to me. Even though a Murcielago joined the channel first, this is technically my first Lamborghini because it was committed to and ordered long before the Murcielago. Now, in the past, I wouldn't say that I've not necessarily been a very big Lambo fan, but when it came to their V12 flagship cars like the Aventador platform, I was always somewhat of a gearbox snob. And as phenomenal as the SVJ was and is, particularly with the recent excursion on Gumball 3000, I could never get over the sledgehammer to the head that was the single clutch box in that platform. So when I heard utterings and rumours that Lamborghini were going to fit a twin clutch box to a newly developed naturally aspirated V12, and at that time I didn't know it was going to rev to 9,500, built around a carbon fibre tub, I thought this could just be the very car that brings me into Lamborghini for the very first time. Now, as a top line overview, let's just touch on the thing that's probably striking us all first, which is the paint. Now, at time of order, this was the world's first Lamborghini ever to be spec'd in a paint called Oro Alba, which loosely translated means Gold Dawn. And it is a quadruple chroma flare flip metallic paint that's really hard to even convey on camera. Now, I was so captivated by this paint that I did some research into the technology behind it, because I've yet to see the same color twice on this car, depending on time of day, depending on the angle of the sun. Is it overcast? Is it raining? It's always different. Now, it turns out that their chroma flare paints have something called interference pigments. And as the name would suggest, what these pigments are sort of semi-translucent, like nano microscopic particles that interfere with the light that hits them and refracts them at a different angle. Meaning, if you step here, to me right now it's purple, and if I step here, is gold. The spectrums in this, I've seen maybe 5 primary tones. We've got peaches, bronze, purples, gold, yellow, and every now and again, a subtle hint of green. Are you kidding me? I mean, this thing is unhinged. Have you heard the downshifts? That is everything. We're not sending it today. Knock Hill have been very kind to give us the track to use for filming under the stipulation that James, it's not a track day. Oh, the direction change of this is magnificent. The front end on it, it's like a big GT3. It's got that sort of feeling about it. Now, this, and I'll show you in a minute, is the real reason for this car. The engine's obviously a big one, but it's the actuation of the gearbox. Oh, it's that. Oh, the direction change is spectacular. The contribution of the hybrid drivetrain is amazing because you don't really know it's there other than it's just got a load of torque. The torque fill is incredibly impressive. What it must take to calibrate these drivetrains to mate a massive 6.5 litre V12. Listen to that whip crack on the downshift. Massive 6.5 litre V12 with the intricacy and precision of the hybrid unit. The marriage is seamless. It just gives you turbo level of torque with a naturally aspirated engine. All of this, that's the reason for the love for this car, is the marriage between a twin clutch box and an NA V12. You ready? Fun fact, when you want to turn traction off and do donuts in this thing, it becomes a rear wheel drive car as it decouples the front wheel drive of the two electric motors. So when you want it to be, it can still be a pretty raw, driver focused rear wheel drive V12. I actually think it sounds quite good inside. The Lamborghini have pulled off some remarkable tricks with this thing. I mean, a few years ago, let's just go back 3 years, we all thought cars like this were dead. The notion that there would be a series production, brand new, high revving, NA V12 3 years ago was like, make the most of it because that's it, it's done. Now, they've not only gone and developed an entirely new engine, I mean, the cost of that, the development, but they've also improved on the Aventador platform. It's 3 inches longer in the tub. You've got an inch more headroom. Gearbox, you can either put it in super efficient auto, or you could put it all the way over into Corsa, which is track mode, and the actuations are sublime. But its breadth of ability for all of that new componentry is remarkable. Drove here in this morning in auto. It was just above freezing and you can swan along in auto, or you can do that and it becomes every bit 1,000 horsepower. The only other car with that genetic makeup fundamentally is a Ferrari LaFerrari. Just think about it. Go and Google and find another mid-rear engined NA V12 twin clutch box built around a carbon tub, plug-in hybrid with the dynamics and overall intention of a supercar. It's a laugh. So effectively, 10 years on from when that platform started to be manufactured, dare I say it, Lamborghini have gone and democratized the hypercar. So it's new, it's fast, it's loud, it looks cool, but what's the purpose? Why did we buy it? Why is it joining the channel? What can you expect from it? Well, I think this is going to be the ultimate road trip car. It's going to do rallies, road trips, events, cool, but I've got a funny feeling it may not even stay in the UK. It may not even stay in Europe. Might it go to Monterey Car Week? Might we nip over and see the DDE boys with this car? 2 Revueltos in August. Sounds cool. And I also have a feeling it might end up on a different continent too. So stay tuned to it. We're going to be putting some serious mileage on this thing.
The Porsche 992 GT3 RS joined the channel toward the end of last year, spec'd in PTS Gulf Orange with full Weissach pack including lightweight forged magnesium wheels. The 4-litre flat 6-cylinder naturally aspirated engine develops 518 horsepower, driven through the rear wheels via a 7-speed PDK gearbox. But the magic is from the aero. Porsche pushed the boundaries with this generation of RS, resulting in over 800 kilograms of available downforce and an active aero wing with drag reduction system.
So this, dare I say it, may be the most important car this entire year. Now this joined the channel Q4 last year, right at the beginning of winter, no time to really put some miles on it. In fact, it still has just under 500 miles on it, rookie numbers I know, and I need to put 1,000 miles of run-in mileage on it before I can rev this thing out consistently to 9,000 RPM. However, the significance of this car is that it's about to go on one of the most daring, bold, challenging and audacious journeys I think I've ever had the idea of dreaming up. If you're new to this, we announced last year a multi-part documentary series that we are filming together with Manthey Racing with the support of Porsche and Michelin called Sub 7. And the idea is we're going to document the journey of what it takes to try and achieve a Sub 7 full Nürburgring lap time in the 992 GT3 RS. And I know that's absolutely bonkers, and that's the whole point of it. Now, while there's obviously going to be lots of laps and in-depth looks as to what it takes from a race team point of view to prep a car and driver to try and attempt this, there's been lots of time I've recently spent on the sim and in the gym in order to prepare myself for the season of intense driving ahead. I also have the intention of not making this about me doing laps. Not only might that become quite repetitive, but we think that the Sub 7 goal is actually an excuse to tell a much wider story about the culture and lifestyle of the Nürburgring. The people that inspire us there, the human stories, the endeavors which have led to some remarkable, dare I even say it, life-changing moments for some of the people that we're going to be speaking to and sharing drives with as part of that series. Now, ultimately, it's going to culminate in me going for a record attempt, which may lead to me becoming the first amateur driver to achieve a officially recorded sub 7-minute full lap time at the Nürburgring. But there's a huge amount of training, development, and no doubt reality checks along the way before we get there. And once this car goes over there, this is going to live there under the care of Manthey Racing, who will be the official race team who is taking care of both myself and this car to make sure that we're both prepped for the challenge which lies ahead. I haven't divulged too much yet, but if anyone is a regular subscriber or follower of the channel, for the last 6 years, we have uploaded between at least 2 or 3 times every single week without fail. The preparation and pre-production for the Sub 7 series is such that we had to take the entirety of March off and concentrate entirely on the preparation and pre-production for the filming of that series, and also to get my own act in shape in order to prepare myself for what's to come. So the reason that this car is on the channel is for the most audacious project that we've ever thought about. Quite rightly, it stirred up some comments and some feedback, and it should. I mean, it's a pretty mental challenge for someone who is not a professional racing driver, but this is the point, right? The whole point of it is an example of other people, including myself as part of this series, pushing themselves way outside of their comfort zone and trying to achieve something that they're deeply passionate about achieving, and trying to push it to the very edge of that passion. So if you're not already, I highly recommend subscribing for the Sub 7 series. It's the biggest thing we've ever filmed. It's the most daring challenge I've ever undertaken. And well, let's just put it this way. It's going to have both highs and lows. I'm going to be spending a lot of time in this seat this year. Like, a lot. Actually, this seat's likely to come out and I'm going to be sat in a full wraparound bucket from a safety point of view, because we're going from track day to effectively time attack at the ring. Some mornings I wake up excited for it. Other mornings I wake up and think, what the hell have I announced? But honestly, from an excitement factor point of view, you know, obviously we're hoping that as part of sharing this journey that we end up doing a Sub 7. That is very much the goal, but as I touched on, it's an excuse to tell a much wider story. I'm well aware that I'm going into something that is no joke. Like, it is not lost on me, the severity and audacity of this challenge. Ultimately, we've got the best partners backing this program, but still, this is like a amateur climbing Everest, only it turns out 6,000 people have successfully summited Everest. Less than 40 people have officially lapped the Nürburgring in Sub 7. Yeah, we're in for a journey. But the point is, we're going to get to share and immerse you from a really in-depth story and content point of view as to what this thing was literally designed for. I mean, its home is the ring. It was developed there, it was made for it. So to be able to film content at 10/10 as well, that's really important. We rarely get to drive a car at 10/10 or 9/10 hard all the time on the channel because we're on the road. But after the drive to the ring, that's the last time this thing's going to spend much time on the road for the majority of the year. Every time we get in it from then on, it's going to be full flipping send. Just listen to, I mean, the actuation of that PDK is phenomenal. I'd love to take it to 9. My discipline here isn't just that Knockhill have asked me not to send it, but the run-in procedure on this is really important, and Porsche literally mandates not taking it to 9 or under any sustained loads until that first 1,000 miles has been completed. So short shifting, adding some much needed mileage on the car, getting a feel for the front end. I mean, most cars, almost every car actually, has a degree of a neutral play in the steering wheel on dead spot. This has absolutely none. It is synaptically connected to the inputs of your fingertips. You steer it with your wrists, not with your arms. So direct. It's so unapologetic in its purpose that Porsche did away with the iconic frunk that used to make a GT3 RS a sort of road-biased track car. But now, because of cooling and aero, there was something that Porsche learnt from the GT3 RSR and GT3R program, where they have turned the wishbones into aero components. So the wishbones themselves, the way that they are sculpted, have actually been through a wind tunnel to generate extra downforce on the front nose. In order to do that, they had to consolidate and move the radiators, which were both left and right of the intakes, and consolidate it into one radiator which sits in the front, which is why there's no more frunk. Now, fun fact about this car, which is why we've conveniently parked the Senna right behind it, is that this GT3 RS, which a few years ago was a performance car, but nothing like this, generates over 800 kilograms of maximum downforce, which coincidentally is the same as that full carbon-bodied McLaren Senna hypercar.
Named after legendary F1 driver Ayrton Senna, the McLaren Senna was designed to be the ultimate road-legal track car. Just 500 Senna were made, each built around an entirely carbon monocell with 800 horsepower and 800 Nm of torque from a 4-litre twin-turbocharged V8, allowing Senna to launch from 0 to 62 miles an hour in a bonkers 2.8 seconds with an ultimate top speed of 208 miles per hour.
So yeah, speaking of downforce, this car, when it launched, was groundbreaking, and yet just over there we've got a GT3 RS, don't get me wrong, it's punchy, with similar performance figures to what I believe is a hypercar. Now, the reason I believe it's a hypercar, and it's interesting timing because McLaren have recently announced the W1, which is the successor to the P1, but importantly sits in what McLaren calls their Ultimate Series. And within the Ultimate Series, they reserve that for their ultimate cars, which have been P1, Senna, W1, Elva, etc. They're all either incredibly special or hypercar brackets. And that's why I think this is kind of like an entry-level hypercar. It's really a poignant time for this because this was the last of the non-hybrid twin-turbocharged V8s in their Ultimate Series. And the fact that they named it after Senna probably gives you an indication as to what McLaren believed this platform was going to be and how it would stand the test of time. In a strange way, it's not dissimilar to Ferrari naming the Enzo. It's named after one of their most important icons that was so integral to the success of the brand. Now, production numbers, they only made 500. I think we're all aware that not all 500 of those still exist, but it's an incredibly interesting proposition for the future because it's lightweight, it's pure, it's raw, and it has a sole focus of, despite the fact that it has number plates and it's road legal, clues in the name, this is very much designed to be on track. at the front end on this thing. It's so daft. Really interesting actually getting out of the GT3 and then straight into this. In many ways, their purpose is quite similar. They are track bias road cars. Senna only becomes Senna when you can put it into race mode. And this is where the downforce really comes alive. So for some context, when you press driver modes and sports buttons and things in most supercars, they might sharpen throttle response, they might make the exhaust sound better, they might stiffen the damping. In this, my insurer has told me that race mode is such a dramatic transformation to the overall setup of this car that if I am to drive it on the road in race mode, I'm technically uninsured. Now, the reason for that is because it drops the ride height of the car so low that it's just not suitable for driving on the road. The reason it does that is because a great percentage of the overall downforce figures combined are generated by a degree of ground effect. And in order for that to switch on, you have to slam it on the floor and then drive it very fast at track speeds, which is why for me, Senna becomes Senna when you get it on track. Once you do that and you unlock it and you get all of its aero switched on, it is absolutely mind-bendingly cool experience. Sometimes you look at this and go, how did they manage to make this road legal? I mean, this is the only car, I think, road legal car that I think makes the 992 3RS's rear wing look moderately normal. I remember when that wing launched on the GT3 RS, thinking that's absolutely mental. Then you park it next to this and realize that McLaren were ahead of their time in craziness. When this aero switches on, it's quite similar actually to the 3RS. There's something a little bit crazier about this because it's the best part of 800 horsepower. But it doesn't weigh much, so when you combine all that power, all that torque, all that aero together, hot sticky tires on a smooth racetrack, as I was talking about, that's when Senna becomes Senna in race mode. It's just a different beast. Let's try and spend some more time with this thing. All right, we've never done this, but ahead of the garage update, I put it out on Instagram that we were filming this to give you guys the opportunity to ask us some questions. And coincidentally, speaking of insurance, AdSlade01 has asked, how do you go about insuring all of the cars? Amazingly, I get that question quite a bit. Now, I'm quite good about talking about cars, but I'm not so good about talking of insurance. So I brought a man along who's been doing this for 20 years to inform you of the nuances of this madness.
It's not straightforward, as you know.
I don't think I've ever asked you how you do it, actually.
No, I just sort of take care of it, ask you lots of questions.
Yeah.
But I mean, look, we've got a great collection of cars here, and what we do, we go to the insurance market, we only use top rated insurers, and we take the whole collection. But when we take that collection, each car has its own story, much like QTEL, and that story will determine on what sort of terms and rates and everything we get. So when I'm talking to insurers and I've got a schedule of cars, we'll take something like the MrJWW and we'll explain this car is laid up, right? It's not being used, it might be driven around the track today, but it doesn't get taken on road. It's more like a piece of art. So the insurance will be cheaper on that. The cover will be correct for what is essentially a modern classic. And there's going to be bits and pieces in the cover to make sure it's, you know, value, agreed values there, extended value if needed. And then the complete opposite end of the spectrum with the GTC, that's your daily, right?
Yeah.
So we're making sure that within this collection, this portfolio insurance, there's no mileage limitations on it, and that you are fully covered. Also giving you the benefit of other people being able to drive it that you trust. Bearing in mind you're all over the place, lots of people are moving cars, etc., like we have done to get them here today.
Yeah.
And then you go from classic, sort of laid up, high mileage daily users. High mileage is a strong term for the amount you actually use it, but
Yeah.
then we turn around here and we've got the full-on track cars. And as you say, like, you're covered on your policy to drive these on the road because you need to.
Yeah.
But what they're built for is track, right? So, and we've recently just started in a new track insurance program, which we're doing for you. All these cars are covered for you on track, and you just give me the dates and what you're doing, and then we're making sure we package that together. But to insure all of these cars, the best way to do it is to use one broker, ideally me, to insure everything you have for your personal stuff, your home, your watch collection, sunglasses, the lot.
Yeah.
And then you're going to be getting the best sort of terms, and that's what we set out to do when we get these collection of cars that come through.
Yeah.
The Lamborghini Murcielago LP640 features a 6.5-litre naturally aspirated V12 with 631 horsepower and 487 pounds-feet of torque, achieving 0 to 60 miles an hour in just 3.3 seconds and a top speed of 211 miles per hour. It was the evolution of the Murcielago platform, with an all-wheel drive system and viscous traction unit for improved grip. The facelifted Lambo benefited from revised aerodynamics, a larger central exhaust, upgraded suspension, and a reinforced chassis for better handling. This example is painted in Nero Aldebaran, a pure piano black finish, and is likely the world's lowest mileage right-hand drive example.
Right, there's a very long story that I'm going to try and make short on this particular car. If you've been following the channel since August last year, Damon of DDE, Daily Driven Exotics, wonderful pair of dudes, Damon and Dave, who run a YouTube channel over there, very kindly gave me the keys to his manual pre-LP Lamborghini Murcielago. And I had a profound moment of realization that, funnily enough, a naturally aspirated V12 manual Lamborghini is an amazing thing. So it got under my skin so much during the week of driving that car, I actually said to Damon, first thing I'm going to do when I get back is go on the hunt for a Murcielago, ideally manual. Well, it turns out that manual Murcielagos from factory are incredibly rare, but also, having already whet my appetite with the pre-LP car, I actually preferred the aesthetics of the LP version. This is the LP640, and understanding the enhancements of the engine, it just teased me enough to go, if I can find one of these, an LP640 manual, that would be the dream combination. I preferred the way it looked, and I preferred the updated engineering upgrades. Long story short, finding manuals of these full stop is very, very hard. I found a left-hand drive example in Europe with over 30,000 miles, which was nearly 800,000 pounds, sir. So we changed tack and thought, well, wouldn't it be great to perhaps go on a really interesting engineering and content journey and get an e-gear car, auto, paddle shift LP640, and then take it for a manual conversion. And I'd actually already booked the manual conversion in with a company to do that work. We were then going to, of course, put the obligatory exhaust on it and then take it on road trips and probably go and meet up with Damon and Dave. And then this car came along. Now, when we're searching for cars to add to the channel, ultimately they are assets. This is run as a business. We've got team, employees, overheads, and if we're putting this kind of money into cars this special, they've got to be right. So we looked for various cars. One of the main stipulations was that if we were going to buy it, it had to go through a Lamborghini official service center to give it an inspection, to give it the tick. It was ideally going to be between 8,000 and 10,000 miles, which is why this thing's quite funny. I shall share that with you shortly. And just generally being a good, clean foundation of which to build on, knowing that the overall platform was safe. And then this came along. Come and check out this. If you haven't seen this already, you might not believe this. When I bought this car, it had 225 miles on it. And now, because I've taken it for a little drive for its first drive last week, it's now got 238 miles on it. Right. So you might think, well, why did you buy this one if you were going to do a manual conversion on it? The reason was I didn't appreciate it for a low mileage car. I saw it as an opportunity to go on a box fresh blank canvas journey with a car that was perfect. It had no history problems, it had no cosmetic damage, it had nothing wrong with it. And I thought, well, this would be great. I can share the very first miles of this car with you guys as a manually converted car. Then we launched it online and the messages came. I have never seen a car so divisive introduced to the garage. We had messages to buy it. We had messages begging us not to convert it. We had messages saying, drive it, don't drive it, sell it, send it, store it, convert it, don't convert it. Just every variable that you could think of to do with a car came in bucket loads. In fact, just the comment section alone under the launch of this car had 4,700 comments giving me feedback as to what people think we should do with it. And it was great. It was really cool, but it opened my eyes. Well, actually, what opened my eyes were the collectors that reached out offering crazy money for what we believe to be the lowest mileage right-hand drive LP640 in the world. So the intention is to drive it, but not drive it much, right? This is about preserving a very special piece of Lamborghini history, but also having the honor to be the custodians of that. So as we were touching on, this is going to be a garage queen, in all fairness, but it doesn't mean we're never going to use it. Case in point, having it on track is cool, but it's mostly cool just to sort of experience it, really. The original intention was to have 3 pedals and a whacking great gear stick there, which would have been amazing. And we might get around to that on a different car one day. But for now, this is all about custodianship, looking after it, and I think importantly, taking it to events for other people to see it and enjoy it and film it, you know, use it for things. There'll be other content stories and things where this will still feature. It's not going to get wrapped in bubble wrap and never see the light of day, but it will be preserved. And here's E-gear. This is the thing that I was looking to swap out of the car in favor of a manual experience. But the downshifts are actually pretty good. Downshifts on all these single clutch things. I mean, this is basically an automated manual. It's old school. It's the upshifts, which are very much a semi-automated manual. In fact, you have to give the throttle just a subtle lift, then engage it, it actuates, and then back on the gas. It just helps iron it out a little bit. Now down here, there is a sport button. See what that does. From what I can tell, not a great deal. Downshifts are cool. I fully understand now, having the opportunity of interacting with a totally stock LP640, why so many of them are not kept stock in the exhaust department. It really isn't that exciting, weirdly. They don't sound that crazy. Now, let's remember the sound that it is capable of making is wild. When they launched, if you were to use it as intended, you might not want that tone every day. And if I was to do a road trip in this thing, well, I've done one in Damon's Murcielago, and you got to be prepared for that level of noise for that amount of time. And we did an 8-hour road trip up to Monterey from LA. Phenomenal on one hand, because all I was doing was changing gear for absolutely no reason at all, just to interact with the gearbox and the wonderful V12. On the other hand, you had to find the right speed and gear and resonance of the engine for it to not be blowing your ears out. Gotta say though, pulled at the heartstrings hard enough for me to want to buy one. Here's something else. These tires, and it's one of the reasons that I'm taking it exceptionally steady, these tires are the original tires that were fitted on the factory in 2007, the same ones. So 2 reasons that I'm taking it steady. The first reason is I want to preserve those tires because they're a piece of history on this car. The second reason is any rubber that used to be in there is now plastic. So I don't want to be throwing this piece of art into a corner with a dead, dry compound that's not going to provide me with a great deal of grip.
This is one of my all-time favorites, the 2008 Aston Martin DBS, a 5.9-litre naturally aspirated V12 developing 510 horsepower run through a beautifully weighted 6-speed manual gearbox, with the power going to the rear wheels. With carbon ceramic discs fitted as standard, the recipe for the DBS was all about less weight and more power, with Aston applying extensive use of carbon fiber throughout the car, with the bonnet, the boot, the front wings, the door opening surrounds and the boot compartment all made of carbon fiber. But this car has a story.
All right, this is going to be one of my all-time favorite cars, not just for the car itself, but actually the journey that we've been on. So this went on a 2-year ground-up restoration journey with Aston Martin Works. The backstory is always dying for a manual V12 DBS. And I caught wind of one that was in a private collection. It was shared with me that it was going to be sold, and I never actually had the car inspected or checked because the home it was coming from had some really serious cars in, and I just assumed that it would be fine. The car turned up. Other than the paint, I thought it was fine, but because the paint was nailed, after its first drive, I took it to a detailing center who were about to apply PPF to it, and they said there's actually no point in applying PPF to this because once it goes on, it's going to show up just how bad the paint is. So I thought, well, if we're not going to do that, why don't we respray the car? As it happens, I'd been on a journey a couple of years prior to the arrival of this car with Aston Martin themselves, co-designing a limited edition Aston Martin DBX, the SUV. And as part of that, I designed this paint, created it from scratch together with their paint tech team, which was a phenomenal journey. It took about 6 months to create the paint. It's made up of 14 different pigments. One of them is a xeralic compound, which is only sourced from a specific region in Japan. That became a very rare commodity once there was a tsunami which wiped out some of the supply of that pigment. And as such, this paint is very rare and very special. Now, it's named Lennox Green, and it has ended up on some very special cars all around the world, including multiple Valkyries and even a V12 Speedster, amongst other cars. Now, the reason it's one of my favorites is because the journey that unfolded was at first quite painful, but in the end it resulted in this one-of-one ground-up restoration from works. So when we sent it in to get the respray, the original intention was, we'll take this car apart and it's going to take, I don't know, maybe in total 6 weeks to do the full job. Now, there's a wonderful human at Aston Martin Works called Steve, and Steve has worked there since the 1980s, and what Steve doesn't know about Astons isn't worth knowing at all. And the first screw that he pulled out of this car to take off the panels, he walked over to me and said, "That's not factory." And I said, "What does that mean, Steve?" And he said, "Well, if it's not factory, it means we haven't put it in there, which means someone else has, so we're going to investigate further and see if there's any more non-factory issue fixings or parts on this car." Long story short, it turned out that the car that I thought was okay had actually been involved in an accident, and once upon a time had been inducted into a Backstreet Bob workshop, and the rear bumper was held on with wood glue. I'm not exaggerating, like it was literally bonded with wood glue, so much so that Steve said, "I can't believe that bumper hasn't fallen off yet." The front grille, this is normally one single part. You can pull it out and remove it with a set of screws and it comes out in a single unit. Steve undid it and all of the veins fell out of it. So it had interfaced with all sorts of things in its life. The airbox was cracked, there was corrosion, wrong bolts in it to hold on things in the wrong order. And what started off as a simple paint job ended up being a 2-year restoration on both the exterior and the interior, which was year 2 of the restoration program. The irony of being on a racetrack in the DBS is that my favorite feature of it is how much fun I have going slowly. Now, that's a rare trick these days. Think about when a manufacturer launches a new car, particularly a performance car, a Super GT. The general notion is more performance, more power, etc. This, I don't know, it's not about less, but it's about more emotion and theatre and engagement and not requiring it to be sent. You don't have to grab it by the scruff of its neck and send it in order to enjoy that V12. Now, the bespoke accents, all of these bronze and gold accents came off that special edition DBX program, which I worked on with Aston Martin, including, and this is the thing that we're all the most proud of, the antique bronze badge. Trying to convince Aston Martin to create a new badge for a one-of-one car is almost impossible. So the fact that we got that signed off at the very top of Aston Martin has also made this quite a special project. But now it's done. The guys at AR Exclusive have applied paint protection film to it so we can actually use it. And we just did, coincidentally, last week, the first drive in it since it's been restored. So 2-year journey. I've had the car since 2020, drove it for 18 months black, and now we have it here in all its glory, finally ready to drive and put some miles on it. So what do you want to see from this car? We're going to use it a lot more this year because it's finally ready, protected with PPF, and ready to rock. Listen to it, and you're wafting along on a bed of torque. It sounds like that, it looks like this. It's just a beautiful thing. I love being in this thing, and the actuation as well, the throw of the box. This Marek Reichman designed, now iconic, but at the time controversial gear shifter. I mean, it's billet, it's beautiful, it's polished, it's cold to the touch in the winter, it's hot to the touch in the summer. But when you're behind the wheel and you're shifting with that, It's purposeful. I mean, listen to it. What a machine!
The Ferrari GTC4 V12 Lusso recently joined as the only four-seater car in the garage, a shooting brake Grand Tourer painted in Ferrari Grigio Silverstone, powered by a 6.3-litre naturally aspirated V12, producing 680 horsepower and 514 pound-feet of torque, revving out to 8,250 RPM. It accelerates from 0 to 60 miles an hour in just 3.4 seconds with a 208 mile an hour top speed. Featuring Ferrari's all-wheel drive, all-wheel steer system, it supports the channel with practicality and performance in all conditions, and remains one of Ferrari's most versatile GTs ever made.
Ferrari V12 Lusso. Now, this is a daily driver. When I say daily driver, I don't mean doing the school run. I mean, we use it daily on the channel. We have tracking car applications, road trips. We'll be doing a lot of that this year, heading on to continental Europe. We'll use it for other applications within the business, but effectively this is the daily driver. We'll talk about the cars which we've sold and have exited the channel shortly, but the segue as to the introduction to this car is the fact that the M3 Touring was that car. That was our luggage carrier, camera car carrier, crew carrier, daily driver support car. Now, the intention with the M3 Touring was once the M5 Touring launched, that was going to be the natural progression to get into an M5 Touring. However, just being completely blunt, I don't like the way it looks. It's really expensive, and even though I'm sure they've done a wonderful job on the calibration to disguise the weight, I just can't have the ethos of an M product have the weight of a sedated whale. So we thought, well, what else is there in that price bracket of a fairly well-specced BMW M5 that would also have a similar application? Enter V12 Lusso. Now, when these cars were new, in fact, when this actual car was new, based on its spec, it was the best part of £300,000, and this one was acquired for £130,000. Now, it's still a good chunk of change, but it sat right in around about the same price of an M5 Touring, which was the original intention. But this is a naturally aspirated, four-seater, twin-clutch boxed Ferrari V12 with 4 seats and a fairly decent boot, which, let's not pretend, an NA Ferrari V12 is somewhat of a slice of the automotive holy grail. And to have that incredible block here with this application here, extra seats and a boot, is something that we just couldn't turn down. That sound there, that's the whole reason of buying this car. 4 seats, NA V12, connected to a laser sharp twin clutch box. I think the Lusso, I don't know if it's misunderstood. I think it's Marmite. I think people either totally get it or just don't. And like, why would you want a 4-seater Ferrari? Although based on sales figures of a Pura Sangue, lots of people want 4-seater Ferraris. But that's what this is. This is the spiritual predecessor to the Pura Sangue. Pura Sangue is its successor. And once again, this is much more of a support car, team car, daily driver, crew, gear in, tracking, etc. It's so complete. Similar to the GT3 991 is that it's a great balance of digital and analog, meaning you've got this big touchscreen display here with Apple CarPlay, but you also have a balance of analog physical dials in front of you. So the rev counter is still analog old school. So many brands, I can't decide if it's just because they have so much more information that they want to display or cost saving. Everything's going screens. And I don't think screens, which is effectively plastic, I don't think that necessarily conveys luxury. This is why I like this. It's got enough of the old school essence of Ferrari and enough of the digital convenience in one daily driver package. Comments below, what do you want to see from this thing? For me, it's all about this. Now, I don't think we're going to augment it as heavily as we did with the M3 Touring. That turned out to be quite a substantial project car with the Adro kit fitted by the awesome guys at Auto ID. We had the HRE wheels on it, we had a Miltech exhaust on it, etc. That was quite cool and suited that car. This car, I think it probably only needs the valves pulling, so it sounds okay. Because this is going to be used with much more mileage in mind, we don't necessarily want a heavy hitting exhaust on it because it'll drone. Maybe some different wheels would be quite cool. I don't want to play with the ride height or anything because it just rides really well. And I think that's all it really needs. So we're going to be using this a lot in the background. You'll see it a lot on the Uncut channel because it'll be used, as I mentioned, for support, road trips, crew, etc. But so far, living with it, it's been phenomenal. Now, I was about to say it hasn't skipped a beat, which is half correct, half not. If anybody watched the Uncut channel a few weeks back, the car effectively broke down and died, and I didn't find out until I collected it from the Ferrari dealer that in fact what it has actually done is run out of fuel. Now, I want to put a big asterisk next to this. When they had said that it had run out of fuel, I thought, but when I started it up, it said on the dash 40 miles left. The wonderful team at the Ferrari dealership said, yeah, when it says 40, what it really means is empty. Right? Now, in any other car, being empty would be fine. You go and maybe you get a taxi, pick up some fuel, put it in the car, fill it up, everyone's happy. When this runs empty, it throws an error message in the ECU, which terminates the car. The functionality of the car ceases to exist when it runs low on fuel. And low isn't 0, it's 40 miles. The only thing that has been a problem with it is I let it run low on fuel unknowingly because I had 40 miles left, and then it terminates itself by going, nope, I'm out. You've left me with no fuel. You can deal with this on your own. It has to be put on a flatbed, taken to the Ferrari dealer, and they have to do a factory reset on it in order for it to accept any new fuel. So it has and it hasn't skipped a beat. As long as I don't let it get down to the red light, it'll be fine. All right, next question from you guys. Roper Paul 23 has asked, which car is the most expensive to keep on the road? Well, would you believe of the ones that we've just looked at so far and that we're still to look at, it's actually this one. Now, it's not because the 991 generation GT3 is expensive to maintain. It's that this has got 60,000 miles on it now and I've beat the hell out of it. So by coincidence, before that question was asked, last week, I sent this back to Porsche Perth to have a, dare I say it, recommissioning service because it's been off the road in various different stages of project, because we're going to use this as the wheels to go up and down to the Nürburgring for the sub 7 series. Now, earlier subscribers of the channel, when I say earlier, this is the longest standing car on the channel so far. I think I had this in 2019. Fun fact, this was originally Chris Hoy's car, as in Sir Chris Hoy, super Olympic cyclist. Bought this car off him when it was crayon with a conventional GT3 wing. And since then, it's had some work. The interior has been entirely redone. So it was originally a classic black. Now it looks like I've skinned Garfield. It's an iridescent orange, sort of like almost Hermes orange on contrast blue accents with exposed blue carbon fiber. And this project took so long that it took the car off the road for maybe half a year. Together with that, the exterior of the car was painted. Now, the foundation of this paint was actually blue Electrico, which is a Ferrari paint. And then we took that foundation and we augmented it ourselves. The tone's slightly tweaked, it's very slightly brighter, and it has a more metallic fleck in it too. So in direct sunlight, it really pops. We've got a carbon RS bonnet on it. So a standard GT3 bonnet doesn't have these subtle strakes in it here. And of course, we have a ducktail on it, and it is a manual. So it's almost like a sort of 2.7 RS homage touring Frankenstein. I mean, this thing, you know, when you spend 60,000 miles in a car, it becomes like a glove. You know all the nuances. It just fits like a glove. There's a technicality in here. I've not done all 60,000. Chris Hoy must have put, I think when I got this car, it had about 4,000 miles on it. So he put the first mileage in it, ran it in well, and I was looking for a manual at that time for that reason. It's just sublime. And yeah, so ever since then, it's been on a journey. One of the things that I didn't touch on that I'm sure you can hear by now is the JCR exhaust system. Now, for the trips to and from the ring 10 times this year, I might just dial it down a notch. So I'm speaking with Johnny from JCR just now to see if we can either put some valves in it or we may go and put the stock manifolds back on. But we need to do something. so that when I'm on the road, it sounds like this. Not like this. Which is actually a hard balance because it sounds so good. And again, going back to the whole manual thing and stirring and interacting with the box for no reason than to just do that is a wonderful thing. Let's see how it plays out. But the idea is that we're going to spend a lot of seat time in this car on journeys to the ring, from the ring, and other things. And I want to make up for the numbers that I haven't been doing in this car over the last 18 months. Still feels, I mean, it feels great, really interesting back-to-backing all these cars. They're different weightings and feelings and characteristics. This thing still feels really good. Coincidentally, another audience question was, of all the cars you've got, which is the car that you'll probably never sell? Now, there's some special kit here, but the chances are this is well up there. One of the reasons is it's been on a very personal journey. The other reason is it's so heavily customized and it's been so heavily messed with, and it's got 60,000 miles that I'm not sure anyone would buy it. So let's see. But it's not one that I'm planning on changing. And why I'm excited to almost reintroduce it to the channel is because the sub-7 trip is going to take us to the ring so often that we've decided to use this car to get the miles back on it again. So maybe at the end of this year, we'll go from 60 to maybe 72,000, maybe 75,000 miles by the time it's all said and done. And then I want to get it to 100,000. And then the actual goal is to make this the highest mileage example 991 Gen 2 GT3 in the world.
The Toyota GR Yaris is a rally-bred hot hatch powered by a 1.6-litre turbocharged 3-cylinder engine, producing 250 horsepower as standard and 266 pounds-feet of torque, making it the most powerful 3-cylinder production engine. This one, however, has been tuned by String Theory Garage, now with over 300 horsepower. The GR all-wheel drive system offers variable torque distribution for awesome grip, and with a weight of just 1,280 kilograms, thanks in part to a lightweight carbon roof, aluminium panels, and a motorsport-tuned chassis, this is the ultimate backroad basher, and one of the most exciting homologation specials of the modern era.
All right, my favorite little pocket rocket, the Toyota GR Yaris, also a pretty long-termer on the channel. Now, this has actually turned into quite a bit of a project car, mostly thanks to a wonderful company called String Theory. Ben, if you're watching, hello, we must reconnect because we're going to be doing some fun stuff at the Nürburgring this year. Why I mentioned Nürburgring again is because originally when we took it to String Theory, it was designed to be a track car with a focus on the Nürburgring. So it's had a ITG induction kit, it's had a remap and tune by String Theory. We've got a Integrale style optional wheel, which we use as track wheels, which are currently with Ben at String Theory. So we're going to stick those on again this year when we go to the ring. We also upgraded the discs, the pads, the fluids, the lines, and the springs. And one thing that you can't see is that String Theory put a ceramic pad, like a little plate or shim that goes between the pad and the calipers to help dissipate and absorb heat. So even when you're standing on these, even though these are upgraded brakes with more heat-resistant fluid and lines, that extra shim just helps to keep heat away from those vital components. Also running on a set of Michelin Pilot Sport 4 great all-round tyre. We've been using this up in the Highlands. In fact, it was a tracking car for some of the shoots that we were doing with the Revuelto just the other day. And the fun doesn't stop there. Inside, and this really, of all of the upgrades and changes, it's got String Theory specific seats. So he's got it embroidered there, which is cool. It's got the GR tag embroidered on the headrest. The difference that these make are huge. So when you sit in a GR Yaris, it's funny because it's got a sort of intention as a rally car, but the seats feel like chairs, not like seats, in that you get in it thinking you're going to sit into it and you end up sitting on it. So the biggest difference is dropping your derriere height through a set of buckets. Very cool. New Alcantara clad wheel, red 12 o'clock marker, and Alcantara clad shifter. This is pushing up to 30,000 miles now. We don't have many garage queens. When we do garage queens, we do it really properly. And as Ryan was touching on, lay it up and stick it in the garage and keep it nice and pristine. But when we do driver's cars, we really do that properly too, and we put some serious mileage on. All right, the Pocket Rocket. I would actually say, of all of the cars here, this is actually quite well suited. Obviously GT3 RS here would be amazing. Senna, I've heard, is really good here. But there's something about a tight, twisty track with some larger curbs. It just lends itself. Now, this car has actually been modified for the purpose of track days. The braking has been upgraded. We stripped a bit of weight out with these seats. And while it does spend the majority of its time on the road, when you do get either A, on a road that you can really have a go at it, or B, on a track like so, it comes together. It still has a bit of body roll in it. It is set up a little bit more like a rally car. Like the way it moves, even on the tread blocks of the tires, you can tell it's not necessarily a thoroughbred track machine, and yet it is quite at home on a track, particularly this one. And then towards the rear, we have an Akrapovic titanium exhaust system. Now, why that's funny is this car new was £32,000. That exhaust is probably 20% of the value of the car. So it might be overkill on a car like this, but it's cool, it sounds good, it shaves a spot of weight, and it's always fun to play with titanium. And then the final thing is a rear seat delete, because we never put anyone in the back and we're always traveling with gear, camera bags, etc. So fun car, not planning on selling it anytime soon, really love it. I would be fascinated to drive the new version, the Gen 2, to see what that's all about. But as something with great value, pocket rocket, good for wet track days, it's fantastic. Now, the only thing that I'm planning on changing is the color. It's been yellow since pretty much day one, and it's time for a refresh. So when we get the wheels put back on it, it honestly looks like a little rally car, which is very cool, but it's time for a refresh. So I'm gonna ask you guys, what color should we change the GR Yaris to?
Tasked with designing a Jaguar E-Type that could hassle the track performance of its rivals, Jaguar designer Malcolm Sayer developed a new roofline to reduce drag and improve top speed. The special roofline was 2 inches lower and was designed to cut through the air with greater ease, hence the name Low Drag. As a result, it was discovered the new shape was 10% more aerodynamically efficient than that of even the Ferrari 250 GTO. The Evolution Low Drag features a 4.7-litre XK engine, but since you may have last seen it, there have been some pretty awesome upgrades.
All right, one of my favorite cars. I know we haven't seen it on the channel, but I'm here to explain why. So most of the work that's been done on this car over the last year has taken place under there. Now, subscribers may remember that the introduction of this car on the channel first took place at the flag drop on Gumball 3000 in the Middle East, which we drove from Dubai through the Omani Desert back into Ras Al Khaimah and ended up in Abu Dhabi. And it acted as two things. One, fantastic wheels for the Gumball Rally. In fact, amongst a Bugatti Divo and a Pagani Huayra BC, this actually won and was voted Car of the Year for that particular event, which is super cool. But it also doubled up as hot weather testing, because we were doing a lot of work with Evolution E-Types. Since then, I came back with a list of feedback that I gave to the team at Evolution to say, can we upgrade that? Can we tweak this? Can we change that? One of those things was electronic fuel injection. That might seem really obvious, but I wanted to experience living with a car on carbs because I'd never had that experience. Let's just say I can see why fuel injection exists. It's a bit of a pain. So while in here looks mostly authentic and it looks quite a traditional block and engine setup, and it even still looks like it's on carbs, actually within this traditional carb array is hidden fuel injection. Now down here, which could pass as maybe like a battery box or something like that, is the newly installed Motec ECU system down there. So that little Ethernet port right there, you can plug in to that, and whoever is calibrating the fuel injection can remote dial in. They don't even have to be with the car. They can do it online from a different part of the world and do the calibration of the fuel injection, which is cool. The other cool thing is the fuel injection has actually not only made it more efficient, throttle response much sharper, but the horsepower now is actually up. So it's around about 340 horsepower. Doesn't sound much amongst the company which we've just walked past. However, one of my favorite things about this is how lightweight it is. Now, when we flew it to Dubai for the beginning of that gumball trip, when it rolls onto the Emirates airline, you have to drain most of the fuel out of the tank. But other than that, it is fully operational with all of its curb weight operating fluids, just a very low fuel tank. This car came off Emirates scales at 975 kilograms. You just don't get cars this light anymore. It's so special. So 975 kilograms with the best part of 340 horsepower actually makes this thing pretty swift. But that's not really what this car is about for smoking around in. I mean, it's the coolest thing. We ended up upgrading the fuel injection, lightweight battery, new fuel rail, etc. But the other thing, which you can't see, is it's now had a brand new gearbox. So it's got a revised ratio and improved throw and feel gearbox, and fun fact, a BMW clutch, which has made it a lot easier to drive. All right, this is the first time that I've driven this new gearbox, this new clutch. It's so positive, it's so sharp. But this car, it's nothing to do with speed. As I mentioned, power to weight, that's part of 340 horsepower and under a ton. It moves, right? But it's not about that. It's about just being in it, enjoying it. It's so beautiful. This is the first classic car I've owned, and classic cars, they're just different. I know that's an obvious statement, but everything about them, the way you treat them, the way you interact with them, the way you start them up, you let them warm up, the smells, learning the nuances of them. They feel different on different days, mostly due to temperature, but they can genuinely feel different day to day. This thing in the summer when it's all warmed up. I mean, driving through the Omani desert, oh, it was so cool. The shift of that box, it's a really short throw. I mean, if you think a GT3 has a positive feel of its shift, this thing, oh, it's raw, it's organic. It's just chunky and lovely. But my favorite thing about it is just wafting, is being in it. There's definitely a subconscious play where you know what the car looks like, and certainly to my eyes, it looks beautiful. So you can't help but drive along, sometimes in your subconscious, picturing this in the third person, almost like a drone's eye view, following it along through the countryside. And it adds to it, you know, the aesthetic of how beautiful it is adds to it even when you can't see it from the outside. And then the naturally aspirated straight six. Oh, the side bolsters on these seats are so much better than the previous ones. Oh, I love it. Can't wait for summer in this. Additionally, the seats that I had in before were fine, but I've had entirely new seats designed specifically for me. It's a balance of trying to be in keeping with the period, but also giving it a bit of a funky edge. So I still quite like the addition of the GT40 inspired rivets in these seats. So now it's back, it's ready to rock, fuel injection, everything's upgraded and sorted. There's even new wiring loom just under here, taking care of things like the aircon, general lighting, and there's even a USB port in there to charge your phone. No Apple CarPlay yet though. So this car, I'm very much hoping that I can spend some more time with this year. Honestly, the biggest problem is, and I read your guys' comments, and quite rightly so, you're asking where all of these cars are. The biggest problem is time. Just trying to find the time to go out and do something with them. If we're getting a car out, we're getting it out to film, and that story has to be good. You know, we want you to click on something that's cool and you're gonna either be entertained or learn something. And we don't just take them out just because we need to film something. So finding the time to film something, and then what we do film needs to have a good, value, engaging story for you. So on that note, why don't you just let us know on any of these cars, including this one. If there's anything, any cool ideas you've got, anything you want to see, what might be a good series, just stick it in there. Stick it in the comments. We read as much as we possibly can. And if we think it's cool and we find the time, then we'll endeavor to make it happen.
The Volkswagen XL1 is one of the most aerodynamically efficient production cars ever built. Designed as a hyper-efficient plug-in hybrid, it features a 0.8-litre two-cylinder turbo diesel engine paired with an electric motor, producing a combined, wait for it, 68 horsepower and 103 pounds-feet of torque. With a lightweight carbon fiber monocoque, magnesium wheels and polycarbonate windows, as well as a twin-clutch gearbox, the XL1 weighs just 795 kilograms, allowing it to achieve an astonishing 313 miles per gallon. It has a 7.9 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery, enabling 31 miles of pure electric range. Volkswagen limited production to just 250 units, making the XL1 one of the rarest and most advanced cars ever made.
All right, finally, the Volkswagen XL1. Now join me around the rear because I think this is the most telling about the genetic makeup of this pretty wild car. So a bit of a history lesson. Volkswagen only made 200 of these. That's not technically correct. They made 250 of them. However, for some reason, unknown reason, Volkswagen only made available for sale 200 of them. I'm led to believe that the other 50 were kept for posterity, R&D, museums, events, but 200 were only made available for sale. Now, the significance of this is, and it's the most out of place car here, it's a wild, pioneering engineering story. So at the time of commission, the group CEO of the Volkswagen Audi group was a pioneer called Ferdinand Piëch. And in a similar time frame, he decided to commission the ultimate extremes of two goals. One was the Bugatti Veyron, which was the ultimate example of that time of performance, the dynamics, and pushing boundaries of engineering. And at the same time, he commissioned this thing, which was the ultimate expression of efficiency. Now, when I say efficient, this car is capable of 330 miles per gallon. Now, on paper, the next closest car in genetic makeup, as it were, to this is a McLaren Speedtail. So it's built around an entirely carbon tub, with every single exterior panel also being carbon fiber. It has cameras for wing mirrors. It has a twin clutch gearbox, magnesium wheels, and carbon ceramic brakes. The rear wheels are totally shrouded for improved aero efficiency, and it is a mid-rear engine hybrid. Get on to the engine specification shortly. Now, when this car launched, it was the slipperiest car ever made. And what I mean by that is it had the lowest drag coefficient of any series production car. Now, how they did that was with the seating arrangement. They staggered the driver and passenger seat, meaning that the shoulders of the occupants would overlap. That allowed them to make the width of the tub much narrower, therefore making the front of the car much narrower, ultimately reducing its surface area, contributing to its super low drag coefficient. And then there's the doors. When was the last time you saw that door on a McLaren F1? Got a very similar window aperture and the same dihedral door arrangement. It's a really cool, crazy piece of kit. I've actually never seen a car turn heads quite like this thing, and we're really fortunate to spend some time in some pretty special kit. From a design language point of view, it's like Art Deco meets the future. It's quite strange. The strangest thing, though, is the way it drives. I mean, they took weight saving to such a different degree, but it's got wind-up windows. So here you go. This is what it's like sailing an XL1. Now, the reason I say sailing is it's a term that's used amongst the very few XL1 owners out there. The reason for that is how this car works is it's 68 brake horsepower, and you use the two-cylinder diesel engine to get it up to speed. And then when it's up to speed, you then use the hybrid torque to sail it along. Now, because of the Michelin ultra-low rolling resistance tyres, once you get up to speed and you lift off the throttle, most cars, what you don't realise is that the decelerative feeling is from aero drag and friction of the tyres. But in this, there's no aero drag. The coefficient's wildly smooth, and there's also no friction from the tires. So when you lift off the throttle, it doesn't slow down. It literally keeps going. And then when it does eventually start to slow down and you feel a bit of that friction, you then just feather the throttle, in comes the torque of the hybrid, and you just brush it along with silent torque. And that's what owners have referred to as sailing. And speaking of efficiency, they actually launched a game with this car, an efficiency game on the Garmin that it came with from factory. And it basically teaches you how to get the most efficiency out of the car. It's kind of addictive, actually. It's called their Think Blue Trainer. And what this does is it gives you a blue score. Don't know why it's a blue score. You would think it would be a green score, but it gives you a blue score. And it just sort of gives you a window, and it gives you a sort of barometer of what is efficient for the car. So if you obviously give more throttle depression, your score goes down. If you use less throttle, the score goes up. And if you start sailing it, then it loves you and it brings you up closer. My blue score currently is 96 out of 100, which means I'm a very good sailor. It's really trippy. Now, right now, I'm in EV mode, and just there, look, that's all the power of the 2-cylinder diesel engine kicking in. 47 brake horsepower from the engine. You heard that right, it's basically scooter power. 47 brake horsepower from the engine and 27 brake horsepower from the hybrid drivetrain, combined together for your 68 brake horsepower. Now, that doesn't sound much, and it's not a lot. There's motorbikes with more power, but it's so light, it's so efficient at cutting through the air, and there's no friction on the floor, that it just cuts through the elements, and it just keeps going. Like, you lift off the throttle, it just keeps going. It's really weird. Also, no hydraulic steering. It's just organic, natural, straight to the wheels. That way, it's not consuming any energy. It's an amazing thing. I weirdly love it. I know it's a massive juxtaposition to the rest of the garage, but there's something about it, the engineering story, knowing why it exists. It's just a special little thing. I love it.
And now for the sold cars. The final spec of the Revuelto was nearly £600,000. So to make that slightly more palatable, we decided to sell the cars that were very rarely used. The McLaren 720S, Thor, and the 355 were sold. That gave us around half the value of the Revuelto to give us a good foundation to buy that incredible machine. Interestingly, every time a new car is added to the channel, we get quite a few emails and DMs asking for right of first refusal for when we ever come to sell that car. The 720S ended up in the garage of a subscriber, which is pretty cool. Thor was a fun project, but it was never driven. And the 355 began with some upgrades, but there was a long way to go. However, I've got a feeling there'll be another special 355 in the future. The BMW M3 Touring was sold for an upgrade to the Lusso, the Porsche GT3 RS 4-litre departed the garage, and in came the Murcielago LP640. And lastly, the Porsche 992 GT3 and GT4 RS was sold with the GT3 RS incoming. As much as I loved both of those cars, I didn't foresee a situation where I'd ever take either of them over the GT3 RS. Fun fact, the 992 GT3 ended up with none other than Mr. Nico Leonard. And what about the Porsche 993? Well, that is still out in California. I'll be heading out there this year to visit the DDE boys and get an update on the car, but it's still technically part of the garage. So here we are, heading into the season with an awesome array of very special cars. Looking at this scene right now is a serious pinch myself moment. Let me know in the comments what you'd like to see from these cars throughout the year.